For this performance, I'll be focusing on Bull Lee and the impact he had on Sal's journey. Old Bull Lee was many things: a teacher, a writer, traveler, drug addict, and more. He had a free spirit and lived his life on the road. This passage centers around Bull Lee and some of the encounters he had throughout his time. And this was really the way that made my whole road experience began. And the things that were to come are too fantastic not to tell. The whole mad swirl of everything that was to come began then. It would mix up all my friends and all I had left of my family in a big dust cloud over the American night. Carlo told him of old Bull Lee, Elmer Hassel, Jane, Lee in Texas growing weed, Hassel on Rikers Island, Jane wandering on Times Square in a Besandrian and hallucination, with her baby girl in her arms and ending up in Bellevue. Now, it would take all night to tell of old Bull Lee. Let's just say he was a teacher, and it may be said he had every right to teach because he spent all his time learning. The things he learned were what he considered to be and called the facts of life, which he learned not only out of necessity, but because he wanted to. He dragged his long, thin body across America, most of Europe and North Africa in his time, only to see what was going on. He married a white Russian countess in Yugoslavia to get her away from the Nazis in the 30s. There are pictures of him with the international cocaine set, 30 gangs in wild hair leaning on one another. There are other pictures of him in a Panama hat serving the streets of Algiers. He never saw the white Russian countess again. Back in the States came spring, the great time of traveling, and everybody in the scattered gang was getting ready to take one trip or another. I was busily at work on my novel, and when I came to the halfway mark, after a trip down south with my aunt to visit my brother Rocco, I got ready to travel west for the very first time. In Bull Lee's instance, he moved around a lot and had a bunch of odd jobs. He was an exterminator in Chicago, bartender in New York, a summon server in Newark. In Paris, he sat at cafe tables, watching the sullen French faces go by. In Athens, he looked up from his ouzo at what he called the ugliest people in the world. In Istanbul, he threaded his way through crowds of opium addicts and rug sellers looking for the facts. In Chicago, he planned to hold a Turkish bath, hesitated for just 2 minutes too long for a drink, and wound up with $2 and had to make a run for it. He did all these things merely for the experience. Now, the final study was the drug habit. He was in New Orleans, slipping along the streets with shady characters and haunting connection bars. There's a strange story about his college days that illustrates something else about him. He had friends for cocktails in a well-appointed rooms, and one afternoon his pet ferret suddenly ran out and bit an elegant teacup queer on the ankle. Everybody hightailed it out and ran. Old Bull Lee leaped up, grabbed his shotgun, and said, "He smells that old rat again," and shot a hole in the wall big enough for 50 rats. On the wall hung a picture of an ugly old Cape Cod house. His friend said, "Why do you have that ugly thing hanging here?" And Bull said, "I like it because it's ugly." All his life was in that line. Once I knocked on his door in the 60th Street slums of New York, and he opened it wearing a derby hat and a vest with nothing underneath, and striped stud pants. In his hands he held a cook pot with birdseed in the pot, was trying to mash the seed to roll cigarettes. He also experimented boiling codeine cough syrup down to the black mash. That didn't work out too well. He spent long hours with Shakespeare, the immortal bard, he called him. In New Orleans, he began to spend long hours with the Mayan codices. And although he went on talking, the book lay open all the time. I said once, "What's going to happen to us once we die?" And he said, "When you die, you're just dead. That's all." He had a set of chains in his room that he said he used for psychoanalysis. They were experiencing with narcoanalysis and found that old Bull Lee had 7 separate personalities, each growing worse and worse on the way down till finally he was a raved idiot that had to be restrained with chains. The top personality was an English lord. The bottom, the idiot. Halfway, he was an old Negro who stood in line waiting with everyone else and said, "Some's bastards, some's ain't. That's the score." Bull had a sentimental streak about the old days in America, especially 1910, when you could get morphine in a drugstore without prescription, and the Chinese smoked opium out of their evening windows. The country was wild and brawling and free, with abundance of any kind, and everybody had freedom. His chief hate was Washington bureaucracy. Second to that, liberals, then cops. He spent all his time talking and teaching. Jane sat at his feet. So did I. So had Dean. Even Carlo Marx. We had all learned from him. Bull showed me that the only people for me are the mad ones. Ones who are mad to live, mad to talk, mad to be safe, desirous of everything at the same time. The ones who never yawn or say a commonplace thing, but burn, burn, burn like desirous yellow candles, exploding like spiders across the stars. And in the middle, you see a blue center light pop and everyone goes, "Ah." Bull had that effect on people. He was a gray, non-scripted looking fellow you wouldn't notice on the street unless you looked closer and saw his mad, bony skull with its strange youthfulness. Kansas minister with exotic, phenomenal fires and mysteries. He had studied medicine in Vienna, had studied anthropology, and read everything. And now he was settling his life's work, which was the study of things themselves, in the streets of life and the night.